Local broadcasts of Insights on PBS Hawaii are made possible by the support of viewers like you. Mahalo, and by Carl Smith Ball, providing legal services throughout Hawaii and the Pacific since 1857, making a positive difference in the communities where we live and work. With less than 2 months until Hawaii's primary election, county elections divisions are getting ready for the big day. From sending out ballots to securing them for counting, we find out how the counties of Hawaii handle elections. Does it differ from island to island? Plus more on what voters need to know, from registration to options for in-person voting, to what to do if you've lost or damaged your ballot. Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of Insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Lauren Day. The 2024 election season is underway, and for many people, their attention isn't just on the candidates this year. Many eyes will be turned to the election process itself. Tonight, we have the 4 county clerks joining us in studio to explain how each county here in Hawaii handles the elections. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. As a reminder, you can email or call in your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and on the PBS Hawaii YouTube page. Now to our guests in studio. John Henrick was born and raised in Hilo and was appointed Hawaii County Clerk in 2018. From 2008 to 2014, he assisted the Elections Division of the County Clerk's Office, providing training to precinct officials and performing troubleshooting duties on primary and general election days. Glen Takahasi is the city clerk for the city and county of Honolulu. He was appointed by the Honolulu City Council in 2015. Glen has worked in state and county government public service that includes 16 years as Honolulu's elections administrator. Lutey was appointed county clerk for the county of Maui last year. She is a graduate of Lahaina Luna High School, Loyola Marymount University, and the William S. Richardson School of Law. Immediately preceding her appointment as county clerk, Moana served as corporation counsel under former Maui County Mayor Mike Victorino. And Jade Tanigawa has served as Kauaʻi County Clerk since 2015. She is a graduate of the Kamehameha School's Kapalama campus and the University of Redlands. She resides in Lihue and with her husband, Troy, and their 2 sons. Thank you all so much for being here in studio. This is a pretty significant night for PBS Hawaii because this is the first time we have had all the county clerks on the Insights show. So thank you so much for joining us. Glen, with that, I'll start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about the role of a county clerk? Sure. What do you do and what does your job entail?
Sure. Well, I think the county clerks, elections are a good part of our duties, but we also provide support for our respective county councils, which includes, for my office anyway, clerical support and the like. But yeah, it's kind of a split because elections come up every other year and the county councils operate continuously, right? Mm-hmm. So.
And how does the job, maybe Jade, you can chime in, how does your job differ on Kauaʻi compared to Glen's role?
Well, on Kauaʻi we really don't have personal staff, so our office handles both council and committee meetings, and in addition to elections and records and stuff. Mm-hmm. So we kind of cover a lot more as far as duties. Mm-hmm.
John and Moana, what would you like to add for people to know about the role of a county clerk?
You know, I don't know how many county clerks are appointed because of their elections experience. You know, Glen has vast elections experience. My elections experience, you kind of ran through in the beginning, was training and assisting at times of elections. So I've learned, I hope, you know, throughout the years more and more about elections. You start out maybe as a supportive role, really. Most of us, if not all of us, have election program administrators who are dedicated career election people that really run our elections offices that we really rely on for the day-to-day affairs. And early on in this role, you know, not having a lot of experience with the day-to-day affairs as they go on through the year really was to be there to support that role in whatever way I can, be the face of the office to moments like this or during elections to be a spokesperson, but also to be there when certain challenges arise, and be there to support the people there and make sure that they have the resources they need. And then as you become more comfortable and become more knowledgeable, you're able to be more effective in that role. So I think it's a little different for all of us, quite frankly, in how we support our elections offices and how we go about doing that. But it's really about support.
Moana, what about for Maui?
Our roles are very similar to what Glenn described for his. We support the county council. We keep documents like in Jade's office, and I'm sure as Glenn and John as well. And then our elections, I mean, I didn't get hired for my elections. Know how this is my first time actually being in charge of elections. But we have a really great staff who've been there for quite some time. They're supportive, they're helpful. I rely on all three of the other clerks here and their staff regularly. So that's really what I hope is going to get us through a really nice and efficient and successful election. That's the hope.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how well do you guys work together? Or are you communicating often between the different counties?
Oh yeah. I think I'm the newest member of this group, and so I regularly reach out to all of them.
For a variety of matters, not just elections, but I think, you know, there used to be a more formal association of the clerks in the past, and for whatever reasons that didn't carry through, but I've noticed, and we've made efforts to, especially with elections, to bring the different teams together to in one location. People travel to come and meet each other and talk about our different operational issues. You know, every island's different. Every island has its different, and islands, right, have their different logistical issues, but we all have things in common, that when we can come together, we can talk about things, and we can talk about how solutions we've had, challenges we've faced, and types of resources that really will help us, you know, get through those moments. And yeah, we definitely have excellent relationships. There's no competition whatsoever. It's just a matter of, you know, sharing, you know, what we know. And I early on I relied a lot on Glen. Obviously, he has a lot of experience, and just, you know, I call nitty gritty. Glen knows the nitty gritty, the nuts and the bolts. So definitely relied upon that. But I think we take pride in the fact that not just the four of us, but all of our elections divisions, you know, my staff, you know, our election program administrator, very close with the others. They're calling each other daily, especially as we get closer and closer to ballots going out and the rubber hitting the road. There's a lot of communication, daily basis with each other, talking, and it's very effective. It's really collaborative.
I think the four of you kind of touched on this, but Glenn, maybe you can expand. For people who don't know, what does the role of the county clerk do when it comes to elections? Okay,
well, the legal framework for elections really splits the election duties in two parts. There's the direct services aspect, which are really the responsibility of the counties to service the voters. And then the state elections office will handle the counting of the ballots on the back end. So that's kind of like the separation. We also do, you know, voter registration, a lot of processing related duties. You might have been to our shop down near the airport, but you'll see a couple of mail sorters and a lot of machineries, as now each of my colleagues over here have in their shops as well. So yeah, maybe that's perhaps the primary difference in election responsibilities between county and state.
And I do want to get into kind of the details, the 411 that people need to know, our viewers, what they need to know ahead of election season. But you know, one topic that I think is talked about a lot across the country would be election security. You know, how secure are our elections? So maybe I'll pose this question to all four of you and you all can chime in, but how secure are our elections specifically here in the state of Hawaii?
I feel very confident as far as it starts with products, and it starts with our vendors, making sure that, you know, they run through the gamut of federal certifications, everything from the ballots themselves with their unique identifiers on them, but also that are not traced back to the voter, which is critical. I think some people would like to know that their ballot is connected to them, but really that's a feature, not a flaw, that it's not. It's about secrecy. So it's about our vendors that we work with, that we contract with, and providing products that guarantee that, but it's also about our people that we work with when it comes to security, and them understanding of how important that is, and protecting the process and protecting each person's vote. And then, just making sure they have the infrastructure in place that's required. And I think it all just starts with respect. It just starts with respect for democracy, respect for the process, understanding how important elections are. But again, a key part of that is our vendors. And again, it's not something that, it's federally certified. They run through a gamut of testing and different, and we also go through testing as the elections get closer. And a very important part of that process too, when it comes to security and transparency, is that there's volunteers involved from different political parties that come and they're integrated into it to see for themselves how secure the process is and how accurate everything is. Exactly, and that's a critical component. It always was, even before in the polling place models, even more so. But as we continue now in elections by mail, our volunteers, our observers, and the people that come and assist are critical to that component too, to ensure that it's not just a bureaucracy, it's a community that runs the elections.
Jade, if someone comes to you, someone on Kauaʻi, and asks, how safe are our elections? Can I trust that my vote is going to count? What would you say to them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is very secure. I feel very confident, as does John and the rest of the clerks here. It is a very secure process, and we really take pride in that.
John, you mentioned volunteers. I was going to get to this a little bit later, but Michelle from Maui actually emailed in asking a question about this. How do people volunteer to help at election time, and what is the process when it comes to being able to volunteer?
It's pretty well coordinated, actually, where we reach out to, and the state does to the political parties early on. There's a calendar, there's a scheduling events to find out who we would like to participate in what capacity. And of course, if anybody's interested and they're not part of any organization, they can always just call our offices for us. It's 808-961-8277. Come down to our office, call the clerk's office. We're always looking for people to become engaged. It's very different now, obviously, than when we in the polling place model as far as capacity and how many people that we quote unquote need to come and assist. The numbers aren't as high, but we certainly need quality people to ensure that, again, it's a community-driven process. It is not just a bureaucratic process. So, there are relationships that have been built and formed over the years, but that doesn't mean it's always the same people, because I don't think that would be healthy either. I mean, it's great to have people come back and with that knowledge and that trust that we built, but it's always nice to have new people come, and we've experienced that. So it's a combination of built relationships over the years that people come and assist in their capacity. They're not paid in any way. It's purely their civic engagement and their love of country, love of process. And then again, we get new people every year too that sometimes they don't come back. It's not easy. I'll put that out there too. The ones that come back, they have a lot of tenacity, and they're very, they have a lot of resiliency, because it can be very long days. And most jobs are thankless jobs. Hardly anybody says thank you for what you do, but that's pretty good descriptor. But it's a combination of people that have been coming for years to participate, and then new people too, and we do need people from the younger generations to show up too, because as time goes by, we need more people to come on and to keep that process going.
That's a good point. Is that something that the three of you talk about, maybe how to get the younger generation involved in the election process, whether it be by volunteering?
We've gone to our community, well, now it's UH, Maui College. We've gone there, we have tables out there, we are on social media, we've got a webpage, mauicountyvotes.com, just really trying to pull people in and hopefully get some interest. We've reached out to some of our high schools to see if they'd be interested, because I do think it's important to get them involved as early as possible.
I do want to get to the 411 for our viewers, wondering about what happens to my mail-in ballot, how is it counted, all of the different steps. So Glenn, maybe you can run us through that. What happens to my ballot after I drop it off, and how secure are those ballot drop-offs?
Sure. Well, the first thing to remember is that the ballots go out so that they arrive in homes roughly 18 days before the election. after the voters vote those ballots, they return it to us in these envelopes specific for the election. And it's important to note that each of our offices, we don't open these envelopes. We catalog them in, we record that the envelope has been received, but we don't cut them open and look at people's ballots or how they voted. So what happens is those envelopes will come in and they'll go through our respective mail sorting machines, which will capture images of each of the envelopes, capturing the signature images, some machine readable barcode information, to help us go through our processes of recording that, in fact, so-and-so's ballot has come back in. And then, of course, we go through a signature check where we do a comparison of the signature on that envelope with a reference image that we have on file. And that's the authentication portion of the process. Once that is all taken care of and squared away, these envelopes, and we literally have, in our case, hundreds of thousands of these. They're secured in cages, and at an appropriate time, the custody of these ballot envelopes are transferred over to the state, and then they take it from there and actually go in and start bursting the contents and preparing it.
So up until that point, these envelopes aren't even opened.
They're not
still
even
sealed.
open. We don't know how people voted or which way they lean or otherwise. And that's part of the security, right? You don't want one monolithic organization to be in charge of elections from A to Z. And I think perhaps that's the wisdom of the way Hawaii law was set up, where it gives counties certain responsibilities and the state other responsibilities.
You mentioned the signature verification process. How do you know if a ballot signature is no good or damaged or whatever it may be, and then what happens?
Well, like I mentioned, right, each voter is required to sign off on an affirmation statement on the envelope, and that signature is actually compared against a reference image that we have on file, perhaps from the voter's voter registration form that they submitted, years ago or whatnot. So that's how we authenticate that the submission is in fact valid. That's how the vote by mail process works, not just in Hawaii, but in all of the vote by mail states.
And then what happens if a vote is, or the signature is invalid?
Sure. So it's not where once a signature is looked at and it's invalid, it's done. There is a notify and cure process where if we're about to reject a ballot submission or ballot envelope submission because of a signature issue, we will notify the voter and allow them to cure that issue prior to any final decision on that. And it's very important because sometimes voters' signatures will change over the years as they get older. We know that as people get older, they encounter certain health issues that might affect how their signature appears, and so there's always that second chance to actually cure the signature deficiency.
And so your office would reach out via
yes,
mail?
we reach out via mail to each of the voters where we suspect there's a signature issue. And that signature issue could be a missing signature where they didn't want to sign their envelope, or perhaps a non-matching signature.
There's also ballot tracks that's available through the state. You can look at it on MauiCountyVotes.com or the state OLVR. That website site, and on that you can sign up for ballot tracks, which will show you where your ballot is. So if there's an issue with it, you can sign up for notifications by email, by phone. You can set parameters for how you're contacted, and honestly, that's really going to be your fastest method.
And we do include that with our ballots that go out like a QR kind of code thing so people can sign up for that ballot tracks. As you move into elections by mail model, those types of resources and tools become more important for people. I don't personally use ballot tracks because I do my ballot and I take it to work and I hand it off and I feel pretty confident. But I understand it's good to test the system sometimes.
You can sign up now.
I probably should just to test the system and. But that's a good feature, and I know that the State Office of Elections just put out a press release encouraging people to use ballot tracks. We are paying for it; doesn't cost any more the more people use it, and it's a nice feature for people just to make sure that they can have some confidence, at what stage their ballot is, or if something were to happen where there is a signature issue, they would be notified. in a very timely manner. Yeah.
I do want to get to some of the viewer questions
They're
shortly, but just
coming
to,
in.
Just to, yeah, they are coming in, and I've got a lot of pink papers on here.
You sure do.
But just to wrap up, maybe Jade, you can touch on what's the next step? Who counts the votes, and who's making sure that they are counted correctly?
That responsibility lies with the state.
Okay, got it. And how close, or like how far out does that happen from the election day?
We have, when do we do it?
Yeah, I believe the state probably starts their pre-processing, what they call pre-processing
Yeah.
of the envelopes, roughly about 2 weeks before, I
Yeah.
believe, where they actually start bursting these and scanning the ballots themselves. They're not technically counting the ballots because they're scanning it. It's just capturing images of the actual ballots, and at the appropriate time, they can push the button and it can actually recognize the votes off of those ballots.
Right, that's a critical distinction to note. Like, we don't want to wait until election day to start to count all of these ballots. We wouldn't be able to provide timely results. So that process starts early on, but just to assure everybody, no one there has any idea, like any, like early counts, if you will, that could possibly be leaked or anything of that nature. That's not possible. Another security feature.
And that's because they're sealed, right?
No, what we're saying is we're getting ballots as early as, 17 days before the election sometimes, because as soon as they go out, they can be immediately returned in drop boxes, which we open the drop boxes the same day the ballots go out, because we just want to make sure they're available to people if they want to use those drop boxes. And we start getting mail in, and bulk of our ballots come through USPS. Large majority, 60%, 70%. But anyway, they're brought in, again, the process Glenn talked about, to assure that they're properly signature verified and everything, and then they're taken to a counting center, a very secure counting center, but they will start the process of separating those ballots from those ballot return packets and then running them through, start the counting process. But there is no nobody has any idea what the numbers are.
Got it.
Right, but the process of processing those ballots for preparation for counting and tabulation starts as early as, sometimes, like Glenn said, 2 weeks before election day. Yeah.
That's why this is a busy season for the four of you. All right, let's get to some of our viewer questions. Eric in Kailua is asking, and I'll let any one of you can answer this question. If I do not want to vote by mail, since we've been talking about mail-in voting, where can I vote in person, and is there a recommended best time to go to the polling place?
Well, I want to take that one. On Maui, we are going to be doing voter service centers in Hana for a couple of pop-up days. We will be on Lanai and Molokai 3 days in advance of each election and election day. We're also going to have the Lahaina Civic Center open 3 days in advance and election day. And then our main hub, which is in Wailuku, the Velma McWayne Santos Community Center, that will be open for the entire 2-week period. The best time to come is early. The last few days, from my understanding, it just gets really hectic. So please don't wait. Come in early and just get your votes in.
Moana, I think the County of Maui has some unique challenges when it comes to elections this year. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Right, so we are a county of 3 islands, and so logistically that means we're flying in equipment and then flying back the equipment with the ballots and so forth. We also, obviously with the fires, there's been a lot of changes to our community. So that's why last election time we did not have the Lahaina Civic Center open, but this time a lot of people lost cars. Obviously they lost a lot of homes. We're setting up there to make it more convenient for that community and hopefully, take off some of the congestion from our Wailuku Community Center.
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions for you, Moana.
Okay.
A couple of Maui questions.
Yeah.
This one's from Mark, he emailed in, and then Robert in Kahului. They're similar questions, so I'm going to kind of combine them. What is the plan for the folks from Lahaina and upcountry who lost their homes? How will they get their ballots? And then Mark is asking a similar question about how are you reaching out to Lahaina voters who might have had to move several times over the past year?
We've done a tremendous amount of outreach specific to Lahaina. Our office has called approximately 7,000 voters. We email if we have an email address. We show up to Lahaina-centric events such as There's kupuna days out in Lahaina at one of the hotels, so we go there. Anything we can, we're at the mall. We're doing a lot of outreach for that. There are home losses in Kula, not as high of a degree as Lahaina. So what we've been asking the Lahaina residents to do is just please keep updating for us to keep track of you. Even if you have to do it 4 or 5 times or more, we're fine with that. If you need an absentee ballot, we can do that as well. But we have also worked with the state to try and get those addresses updated.
Mm-hmm. Glen, this question is for you. Moses in Kapolei is asking, there were long lines on election night in Honolulu Hale and at Kapolei Hale, and even on Maui at the walk-in voting places. Will there be more locations for walk-in voting this time?
Yes, we are expecting lines on the last day, and that's why we encourage anyone who is going to utilize some of the in-person services to come before the last day. If you come on any day but the last day, you can be in and out in 10 minutes. But you know, if a voter comes on the last day, be prepared to be with us for even upwards of a couple of hours. You know, we are a vote-by-mail state, but voter service centers are provided for those who need certain services like updating their registration, or perhaps they're disabled that they need access to an accessible voting device. We really encourage voters to avail themselves of the primary voting mechanism, which is voting by mail. But like I said, I am predicting lines on the last day at these 2 sites. But we have to be mindful of the legislated policy or the law that says that they wanted Hawaii voters to be primarily on one voting scheme, which is the vote by mail process. The legislature, in fact, specifically tells us they want a limited number, a quote, limited number of voter service centers. So we really try to be true to that. That being said, at least on Oahu, we know there are certain challenges, geographic challenges, and so again, we are operating voter service centers at Honolulu Hale and Kapolei Hale for the full 2-week period. We also have pop-up centers for 5 days at the Kaneohe District Park and then at the Wahiawa District Park as well, to try to kind of pull in a little bit of those geographic areas. But again, the primary voting mechanism is voting by mail.
So basically, if you want to vote in person, just expect that you might have to wait.
Yeah, it's kind of like traveling the day before Thanksgiving, right? You're going to expect to see certain lines at the airport, and it's the same thing with election day, and that's why we encourage people to you know, again, come in early. It'll be a you know, much more pleasant experience when you're in and out in 10 minutes, right?
I think that's a key point too. By and large, the voter service centers, minus the pop-up sites that you mentioned, which you guys advertise very well, are open 10 days before the election and on Saturdays as well. So try to make sure that there's a time frame that is convenient for people regardless of what lifestyles they may have. And as Glenn said, if you know, I've been at one of our voter service centers on a Saturday, and I was surprised at how few people were coming. But that's like, and then, you know, later on there might be a line on election day, and I let people know, you know, it was here for you on Saturday, and by and large people said, we're okay, we'll stand in line. But it's a choice. They are available, and it can be a very quick process without a line at all, just depending upon proximity to election day. Yeah.
I like your tip. Don't wait till the last minute, or it might be like day before Thanksgiving.
We're shopping right before Christmas.
Yeah, Black Friday.
A few analogies we can throw out there.
Jane, I'll give this question to you. This is Jane emailed in. How are mailing lists for ballots kept current? For example, I received a ballot after my mother died. Should I have notified someone or some office? And then same question regarding people who move out of state.
Yes, if someone passes away, please notify the elections office on your island. We sometimes get notification from the State Department of Health, but it's so much easier if you were to update whether it's your address, if you've moved, no longer in the state of Hawaii. If you've moved, you know, let us know. A ballot won't be sent out, or again, if someone passed away, you know, please let us know, and they'll be taken off.
Is there a number that you call or a website that you would go to for that?
Yep, any of our county elections offices.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that happen where people try to send in a ballot from maybe somebody who passed away, they happen to still get that ballot in the mail?
When you say try to send it in, I mean fraudulently?
Yeah.
I mean, I would hope not. It'd be difficult. It's also a Class C felony. And you're signing in, you're attesting when you sign that you'd have to be able to forge your signature to agree that it would pass through our system too. I can't say it's not happening, but it is a felony for a reason. It's not a misdemeanor. It's not a small matter. And I would encourage anybody, you know, because I've heard anecdotal things that it's the classic dead people voting, which, you know, that's a scary thought. But I always say, if you ever hear anything about this, you need to alert us, because if there are any instances of potential voter fraud, we want to know, because I think it's critical that if anybody were ever to attempt that, they need to be investigated, and if there's any evidence to that, they need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, because it is no small measure. Each person should be one person, one vote. That's what makes all of this, you know, appropriate and correct for everybody, just knowing that my vote and your vote have equal weight.
And that was also where the signature verification process comes in, right?
Correct. Correct.
And our voter rolls are updated based on information that's provided by the state that they get on people who have passed away. And so we do update.
And I think based upon the question too, I think it's important for people to know that while we do take semi-active measures to ensure that our rolls are quote unquote clean, I hope people appreciate this. We don't actively call them looking for reasons to remove people from the voter rolls. That's a feature of the system, it's not a flaw. When we get information, you know, and if, for instance, we read an obituary, we don't just go, okay, take that person off. That's not enough. I think it's a rather big deal to remove somebody from voter registration. If I give you an example, we have 130,000 registered voters on our island, but only 109,000 are going to get ballots, because even though they're registered, there's a portion on that are inactive for a variety of reasons. We're not sure. There's questions about their address. But we don't remove them from the rolls. That's a rather, it's something we don't want to do unless we know it's necessary or somebody's canceled their registration, but it's not something that we actively do. We rely upon our voters to help us out with the voter registration roll.
I think one thing to remember is that maintenance of the voter roll is governed, how we do it is governed by federal law. So we can't just take you off the roll. Oftentimes we have to follow up with a mailer, and if that's not responded to, wait for 2 election cycles prior to actually removing a voter from the voter roll. You know, and it's interesting because, you know, Hawaii is, can be, or at least Honolulu can be a very transient community. People are moving in and out and within, and when the only way we know that that occurs is if we attempt a mailer and a voter card comes back, and we do some database list scrubbing to try to identify records of people that have moved. But I think I saw somewhere last year, 10,000 persons moved out of Hawaii. I mean, we don't know where they went. A lot of them went to California. Some to Nevada, but I also read that 10,000 people from California relocated to Hawaii. So, you know, that's the tricky part. There's no such thing as a perfect voter roll. We all want the voter roll to be as clean as possible, but there's no such thing. Not in a transient community. Our roll on Oahu might have a bit more deadwood than, say, Jade on Kauaʻi, just because we have perhaps higher rent and people moving around searching for the best deal that they can.
On the island itself.
Right, you know, Moana there, they just went through a tragedy where an entire community is not there and is probably scattered all around Maui. So, yeah, those are the challenges, you know. It's, and we have freedoms as Americans, right, to move, pick up and move. And so election officials across the nation do their best, I think, to try to identify those that have moved and keep things current. But again, we rely upon voters to tell us that something happened in their life. Grandpa died or whatnot, and we can start taking the action to, again, remove somebody from a roll or so-and-so move to the mainland.
And it's not a cumbersome process for somebody to update their voter registration. It can be done online. It can be done, you know, through the mail. If they have any questions, again, call us, go on our website. We have, you know, really simple pathways to get people to be able to update their voter registration. It's quick, it's quote unquote painless. So, and that's the kind of help we rely upon for people to do. Now, granted, when events happen in people's life, it's probably not the foremost thing on their mind. They're worried more about where they're going to get their Netflix bill or something of that nature, make their bills and different things and things of that nature. But it's critical that the voter does help us out to make sure the registration is up to date when they have life-changing events.
Since we're talking about updating your registration info, we have someone asking, I'm a new voter this year, just turned 18. How do I register to vote? Let's make sure we get this information across.
They can do it online.
It's the
They
simplest
just need
way.
a state ID,
Social
or
security number.
Social security number, or and it's
OLVO.
Driver license.
Yes, driver's
Hawaii
license.
driver license, and you can do that online. Or you can do the traditional way by paper.
Paper.
And once you do that, that will ensure that we mail out a ballot to your most current address.
The nice way about doing it on paper too for a new voter is we'll have their signature on file, which again we need in a vote by mail system. We need to have a clean, accurate signature on file to compare when they do send in a mail ballot.
If they don't do it by paper, how do you get the signature? Is it from the
We
driver's
can get it
license?
through motor vehicles or things of that nature. But for like, my daughter's turning 18 in August, and she doesn't have her driver's license yet. She's working on it. So for her, that wouldn't work. So and she's already asked about voting. She's excited to vote. So I just recommend it. It's a very simple form. It can be done in a few minutes, and we'll have everything we need, and then she'll be in the system, and she'll have a signature on file. She'll get a ballot at home, and then she can decide what to do with it.
So if for the folks who are, let's say, new to voting, just registering, they want to do it online, but they don't have a driver's license, how would you get their signature?
That's a good.
Well, if they don't have the Hawaii driver license or state ID, then they would have to do it via the traditional way, via paper. And they can mail it in to us. We just ask that you do it early, because we do mail out ballots roughly 21 days or so before the election. So
Right.
obviously, if you're not in the database, we can't mail a ballot to you. And again, voters have to think about, well, how long will it take for the mail to get to me, and then I got to vote my ballot, mail it back, and kind of make these plans on if you end up getting their ballot, in the last week before the election, they might have to go to a drop box and actually physically drop it off rather than use the postal system. So. And
you just answered one of our Big Island callers who asked about when they will be getting their election ballots. So you didn't answer that question. Is there a point at which it's too late to register to vote? Let's say it's a new voter. Can they do it?
Come in.
That day.
There's some nuances there. If you're going to expect a ballot in the mail, then there is a point in time where it's going to be too late. But one of the things that a voter service center is good for is not necessarily for people to, as a discretionary means of voting, but for people who can register and vote on the same day, including on election day. And in my experience in 2020, our first year with voter service centers, that's what I saw. Some of people were, it wasn't by choice even. They were out of town. They'd flown in coincidentally on election day, and they needed to either update the registration or register for the first time. And that the law now allows for same-day registration and voting at those places. So, it was convenient for them, and it was accessible and something they could do.
This question is from Mark. I think it's for everyone, so everyone's going to chime in here. With Maui County spanning 3 islands, how do you serve the voters in each of the islands? So we'll start with Moana. And for the other clerks, how do you serve the outer lying areas to ensure they have the same opportunities as the more central areas?
We have voter service centers on both Lanai and Molokai. They're open 3 days before each election and on election day. And this year we'll also have drop boxes at both voting centers that will be open for about 18 days prior to the election. So we make sure to include all of our islands in our county. It's unique for us.
What about for Kauaʻi?
For Kauaʻi, we have 9 drop boxes. So we have a drop box in just about every community. So ballots go out in the mail, and if you're in Kekaha or Hanalei, you can drop it off at one of the drop boxes.
What about for in-person voting on Kauaʻi?
In-person voting, it would be at our voter service center in Lihue.
Okay. Got it. And then Big Island.
Yeah.
You're a very expansive island.
Right.
Lots of ground to cover.
Yeah, lots of ground to cover. And what we've been trying to do every year is increase the places to deposit or drop boxes availability. We found that people do appreciate them for whatever reasons. That we still get, again, bulk is in the mail, but they do use those. And the sheer reality is, our voter service centers since 2020 and through 2022 and then into 2024, we've had them in our main, what do you want to call it, like municipal centers in Kona and Hilo that have they're epicenters for activity. And again, they're open for 10 days. So, those are the places they're at. We're hopeful that if people live in more distant areas and they would either prefer to use a voter service center or require one, that within those 10 days, it's likely that they would be there for medical services, shopping, visiting people, relatives, events, or things of that nature. But we're simply unable for a lot of reasons to, and as kind of Glenn put it too, is I'm cautious not to like slowly slip back into a polling place model where you start to have these voter service centers, even if they're smaller, popping up in more rural areas. And we tried that in the past, and quite frankly, they didn't get a lot of usage through early walk-in voting in some of the more rural areas. So. Yeah, it's just a matter of, and again, it's voting by mail, so it's making sure that they have access to their ballot, which, I haven't heard too many issues with that. And then what they do with it after that, largely, again, is just put it back in the mail. So it doesn't really affect them if they're in a distant location with not a lot of services around them.
John, I'll stay with you because Betsy from Hilo is asking, and this is kind of related. Have you noticed at the county level an increase in voter turnout since Hawaii went to mail-in balloting?
Well, very first year, we had a really large turnout. I believe that was because of the candidates in the races. I think we'll have no one here is going to start making predictions about turnout or why. We really are not comfortable with these questions, quite frankly. I'll say I'm not uncomfortable, but it's about the candidates and it's about the races. Voting is available, it's accessible. What gets people interested a lot of times is just who's on the ballot and why and what kind of races they are. For us, it's everything's on the ballot this year: mayor, prosecuting attorney, council, and of course it's a presidential year. So that will likely stimulate voting to pretty high levels in the general, because again, we don't have primary voting here for presidential races, just in the general. So in November, probably pretty high turnout, I'd imagine.
Jade, this question's for you. Elena from Lihue is asking, how do the residents of Ni'ihau vote?
We mail the ballots out to them and they return them. So the Robinson family will assist us in collecting it and they'll mail it back to us.
Okay. We only have about just under 15 minutes and we have quite a few questions, so I'm going to try to speed through them so that we can make sure we get to all of our viewers who are engaged and watching. Glenn, maybe you can take this one. Melanie from Kula is asking, my brother is in prison, is he able to vote?
Yeah, if the person is still incarcerated, no, they have lost their voting rights. And so once he's out on probation, parole, you can register and vote once you've, but again, yeah, if they're still incarcerated, then their voting rights are, I guess, suspended, if you will.
And then I'm going to read these two questions because they're fairly similar, but Lance from Maui is asking, my neighbors and family all received yellow postcards confirming their registration, but I didn't. How do I check that my voter registration is up to date? And then Carol from Mililani on Oahu says, last month I received 7 voter confirmation notices in my mail. My husband and I are the only occupants at this address, but there were 5 other notices for people I've never heard of.
Quickest way to check your voter's registration, which I did, is to go on the OLVR, the state, go to the state's elections website, go on there, punch in a little bit of information, and your status will quickly be brought forward, and you can check everything on there, make sure that you're active and that all the information on your mailing address, your residence address is all accurate. It just takes a few seconds. Okay. And if you can't, you feel free to call our offices. We're happy to talk people through things. It's not a problem whatsoever. That's what we're there for.
Felicia from Mililani is asking, are there observers from the various parties on hand at the walk-in voting places? Well, maybe you can kind of explain how that works.
Sure. We do have an opportunity for the political parties to submit voter service center watchers. We have had watchers in past elections, and so we expect that there will likely be a few names submitted this time as well. But one of the things you need to realize too is that About 97% of votes are cast by mail. We are a vote by mail jurisdiction. So the voter service center watchers, while we welcome them, you got to realize you're looking at only 3% of the actual, I guess, turnout or votes that are cast. But we certainly welcome them, and if they have questions, we work with them and try to explain what's going on. So yeah, we have those as well. I think Big Island and Maui had some, Kauaʻi.
This is sort of a logistical question about registration. A caller who called in to PBS is asking, when someone gets a driver's license, do they have to prove that they are a U.S. citizen? I'm asking because when you get your license, you are automatically registered to vote. How do the clerks confirm that the people are U.S. citizens?
Well, firstly, I think you are not automatically registered when you get your driver's license. You have to opt in and actually fill out the form. Hawaii law actually, and perhaps that's more in Moana's area, but Hawaii law states that any person registering to vote does a self-subscribing oath with regard to their citizenship. So we take them at face value that when they say they are a U.S. citizen. In fact, I don't know of any. Well, we're starting to see now across the nation that some places are requiring certain citizenship type checks, but those checks might be only for certain local, municipal, or elections. But yeah, it is a self-subscribing oath that they have to go through.
We have a viewer from Maui asking, are the ballots mailed to everyone written in multiple languages?
I'm sorry, was that for Maui or
Maui?
Or?
Yeah, Moana.
It's statewide, right. We put it, our ballots go out in Ilocano in English.
Okay. And then from Kauaʻi, Joan is asking, when can I apply for an absentee ballot?
You could just contact the office and we'll send them a form and they can fill out.
I assume that they're going to be away from their home on Kauaʻi or something. They could actually apply now, anytime within the year. But again, if they're just thinking of absentee ballot, but they're at their home, like I said, it's a vote by mail scheme. So we will mail the ballot directly to the person's voter registration address without having to go through an application process.
We basically all become absentee voters, and that's how we got here. Essentially, is that the number of people that were applying for, originally you had to have a reason to get an absentee ballot a long time ago. When the requirement to have a reason was eliminated, more and more people were signing up for absentee voting. They weren't going anywhere. They weren't on the mainland or they weren't on Mars. They were here, but they were preferring to get their ballot mail, and that number increased and increased and increased to the point where the legislature felt comfortable saying the voters have chosen how they want to vote by the way they're voting. But there are still people that do absentee voting because they want to get their ballot, because they're not going to be at their residence where they would normally get their ballot, and that's certainly something. But that is a timing element in that, where we have to make sure that we can get it out to you, and then of course you can get it back in the mail, because they will not be able to use a drop box, obviously. It's not going to work.
We have a viewer in Waikiki. His name is Tom, and I'm going to rephrase the question a little bit, but he's asking about if the counties are concerned at all about any possibility of violence when it comes to around the elections here in Hawaii.
Well, I think, disruption is obviously something that we all need to be concerned with. We just earlier in this year, I think that our state capitol was evacuated because of some threats. And so that's certainly possible. Election officials across the country are now having to worry about or think about some of these things when we never had to do this. I mean, in my first 15, 20 years of doing this, we never thought about disruption or foreign influence over our elections or artificial intelligence, mixed or wrong information going out, disinformation, misinformation. But these are some of the things that I think now as election officials we are thinking about, and we hope that these things don't happen, but it's certainly something that we ponder, I guess, and try to prepare for. You can't prepare for everything, but we certainly do
And the
think
FBI
about those
has
things.
reached out to all of us. I'm sorry. to all of us and met with us to discuss some of these types of issues. We work with our
Local law
police
enforcement.
departments, and for at least our Maui Police Department, they have officers that are assigned specifically to elections, so that they are familiarized with election law and so forth, so that they'll be ready just in case.
Got it. So it sounds like there is some behind the scenes prep work for a just
Definitely.
in case scenario. A few more 411 logistical questions. Is there available parking at the voter service centers, and do we have to pay to park? This is from Sal in Kahuku. Glenn, I'm not sure if you want to take that one.
Yeah, so our voter service centers are all at public buildings, if you will. Like I said, our 2 pop-ups for the Kahuku caller, we have, I believe the closest one would probably be either at the Kaneohe District Park or Wahiawa, so certainly the parking is free there. At our voter service center at Honolulu, we do offer free parking on the meters. But again, on the final day of the election, we're looking to open up the municipal parking lot to allow, because obviously we have a lot more people coming by. So that's part of the plans.
That's the day people might have to expect to wait, though.
Yes.
Yes, of course, and that's why we don't, recommend waiting till the very last day.
Right. We have a social media question. What about college kids who are out of state or anyone who lives in Hawaii but is out of state during the election time? Can a family member send in their ballot on their behalf?
Not without their signature. And then that goes back to the absentee voting. Those are the people that are now kind of our traditional absentee voters. Military, people that, if they move because of schooling or things of that nature, those are our absentee voters. Not uncommon for people to continue to maintain their voting status here while they're learning abroad, wherever it might be, even in foreign countries.
Can you get a second ballot? Let's say one was sent to your house, but for the example, if you're studying abroad.
And I want to talk, he talks about security. We can do replacement ballots for a variety of reasons, and we have measures in place to make sure that once something else is issued, the original ballot is canceled so that it becomes nullified. There's not 2 active ballots out there for that person. And again, it goes back to timing, though. Time runs out for certain things.
And again, if you're a student, say at college on the mainland, if you're thinking about getting an absentee ballot 2 days before the election, you've waited a little too long. So you got to think about how long it takes for the Hawaii election officials to put something in the mail to get to you, and then for you to turn it around and send the ballot back. So, there needs to be some forethought that goes into it for your specific situation.
And then that's the balance of accessibility and security. And we talked about Hawaii laws of that nature and where it kind of falls on the pendulum or spectrum of accessibility and security, and it's pretty much down the middle. It's accessible, but there are also a lot of security measures in place.
Right. Moana, I'll give the last viewer question to you. This is from Tina in Kaka'ako. How do you handle calls from skeptics who don't trust the mail-in election process, since we are on that topic? Or if it comes up in conversation.
They normally come in, actually. I think we've had maybe 1 or 2 calls, but for the most part, people actually physically come in. And the truth is, I try to talk through with them what our process is and how things work, and offer them different types of options for them to look at online and so forth. But ultimately, I can't convince you of things that you just don't want to believe.
Yeah. I know the 4 of you, your roles are to make sure this election process goes smoothly. But just lastly, we have only 2 minutes, so it'll need to be quick answers. What would you like to say to people watching, people of Hawaii, about why they should take the time to plan ahead and to vote? Jade, we'll start with you.
I think it's, your vote is very important. Please vote early. It's secure, it's safe. I can't stress that enough.
Everybody has their own reasons for wanting to vote. Some people only vote during presidential elections, and if that's your reason, well, this is the year, right? It only comes up once every 4 years. But for whatever your reason being, this is the opportunity, so you need to seize upon it now.
Based on our circumstances on Maui, my request is just really please make sure you update your addresses and call us if you have any questions, and vote early.
The 2 things I would say is, there's a lot of nonpartisan races, local races, so vote in August. Don't hope or don't assume that the person that you support is going to be there in November. Take that opportunity in August to vote in the nonpartisan races. They may not be there. And the second thing, and I think, I've come across a surprise that Some people think that they have to vote on every contest in the ballot for any of their votes to count. You don't. Just vote the races you're comfortable with. You don't need to vote for everybody. As Glenn said, vote where you're comfortable and engage and participate.
John, just 1 minute left. Anything you would give, any advice of how to, vote in an informed way?
I think that's different for everybody. For me, talk to people. I'm not going to give you particular advice about what media to follow or resources or what to read or to watch, but talk to people.
And then are there resources on the county sites for the different candidates and where they can find information?
This is new this year, there'll be a digital voter information guide that'll be very accessible. It's going to be web-based, but every ballot will come out, we'll have how do you access that? We're not producing that. The candidates will put out their own 150-word statements about what their platforms are and policies. All the charter questions, constitutional questions will have explanations. But as far as county goes, we stay away from, putting up candidate platforms or pros and cons for measures. It's really would be inappropriate for us.
Got it. Well, thank you all so much for being here tonight. Our first time we've had the county clerks in studio, so we really appreciate it here on PBS Insights. We also want to thank all of our viewers for joining us. Of course, our guests in studio, we had John Henrick of Hawaii County, Moana Lutey of Maui County, Glen Takahasi of Honolulu County, and Jade Tanigawa from Kauaʻi County. And next week, coming up on Insights, we continue our election coverage by hosting some of the candidates for Hawaii County Mayor. They will share their stance on how to make the Big Island a better place. Please join us then. For now, I'm Lauren Day for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Have a great night.
Local broadcasts of Insights on PBS Hawaii are made possible by the support of viewers like you. Mahalo, and by Carl Smith Ball, providing legal services throughout Hawaii and the